Hey everybody, it's Book of Katherine, and we are here to talk about Clean the DNC. So we've done Clean the GOP before, and we are going to do Clean the DNC before. There are so many Democrats for Trump, and we've been hearing about this for a very, very long time. So we know that there are very many Democrats that have learned what the Democratic Party has become. They signed up to be a Democrat because they believed that Democrats were liberal with liberal values, and they're not necessarily a Christian. There's a ton of progressive Christians out there, but there are a ton of conservative Christians out there. There's all these different kind of Christians, but there's a ton of people who are atheist but they still have liberal values where they still believe in human rights, even though atheism is the religion of communism where they have concentration camps and things like that. Communism is the one atheist state, though there is a let's see here. There's only one form of government that outlaws all religions and demands atheism. It's like state-run atheism, and that's communism. And they have the worst human rights abuses, right? They've killed 100 million people. They kill people faster than Sharia has. So that's why I say I don't have a problem with religion as much as I have a problem with communism and atheism, because atheism has killed more people. When I say state-run atheism, it be people who demand atheism, because people who demand atheism, that kind of thinking has killed more people faster than even Islam has, faster than any other form of thinking in the world, incredibly fast and incredibly just astronomical rate, right? So, but there are people who are Democrats and who are atheists and who are humanists and all these things, and even Christian. There's all these different Democrats who actually believe in human rights and believe in liberalism, in the liberal ideology of freedom, and all the 10 Bill of Rights and the Bill of Rights of the 10 freedoms of freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and that's why they believe in the freedom to do with your own body what you will. That's why they believe in abortion, because they think it's a woman's right to choose. They're into it because of freedoms. And then when they find out that the Democrats have actually been robbing people of freedoms, when they find out that Democrats have been banning the free speech in colleges and universities and taking away the rights of women, and funding things like Sharia that takes away the rights of women, takes away the rights of homosexuals in different in like actually bans when funding different sort of whatchamacallit, pushing laws that persecute homosexuality, where they're pushing states. For example, there are states that actually where they still gather together and they throw, gay people off the roof, and then they take those they actually help those states get their funds into college, and they actually lubricate that process so that they get new student groups and student unions into our colleges. And so there's a lot of people who are Democrats because they have democratic values. They believe in democracy. They like the fact that we have local, state, and federal freedoms and the ability to vote. But they don't want, GOP to them means less freedom. They think that means less freedom. And so they're Democrats, they're liberals, but they're finding out the Democrats that they've been voting for have actually been restricting freedom. It's the same thing that the GOP people have been going through. They find out that the GOP has been voting against everything. And that's the point, is that both the GOP and the DNC have been working as a combined unit. And you see it at the National Day of Prayer. Today is what? February 6th, 2020. If you go on February 6th, if you look at the 2020 National Day of Prayer, go ahead and look at that. NBC actually aired it. That tells you something. When NBC actually airs it, which is known to be a Democrat platform, right? So Democrat platform actually aired this National Day of Prayer. And on the stage, they have the Democrats on one side of the stage and the Republicans on the other side of the stage. And of course, the Democrats are dressed the house, super, super expensive jewelry, super, super expensive outfit. Everything's like luxury that they're wearing, and all glitzy and glamorous and super, super bling, right? And then, of course, the Republicans are all wearing mousy little things and mousy, like super, super just like no makeup, no this or no that, and really, really like withdrawn or whatever. But then they come together on stage and then they talk like, oh, we're happy people, and they actually start playing podunk music. Dun 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 dun. We're just like you. They actually said the words like, "See, We're normal people like you. And it's like, wow. They come together and they say they meet together on the second day every single week. They come together for a prayer breakfast, and it's Democrats and Republicans coming together for this prayer breakfast. The Jewish class and then the Christian class, they come together and they work together on the bills and that's Democrat and Republican coming together. And what do they pass together as one whole? They meet together on a weekly basis, and they have this whole speech written out and everything. And what do they pass? They pass the United Nations ambassadors what they pass, which is what the Queen and they behave beautifully, but the laws that they actually pass are extremely destructive to America and extremely proactive for communist states. All the communist states, everything that has unequal rights has boomed. So pro-Sharia states have boomed. India, which has a caste system, has boomed. The communist state of China has now boomed, so that now 900 million people are suffering, and 900 million people make less than $10 a day. They move them all out of the countryside and into these cities where they live in slums now. So now slums have boomed in the world, and it's just the wealth gap has just like completely worldwide just atrocious, right? And it's all Congress is like, we're all the same, right? And so Democrats are seeing that, they have these liberal values of freedom and independence, and they're like, our Democrats aren't doing it, and GOP is seeing the same thing. So Clean the DNC is the same thing. You guys are going to be living in these DNC areas where everyone's Democrat, and you've had the same thing these GOP areas have had, where there are some areas that can be flipped or whatever. That's fine, right? They can be flipped and there's actually a fight over who's going to get it. Oh, maybe a GOP guy will win. Maybe, but really the whole point of cleaning out an area is taking someone who has been in office for forever and cleaning them out. So if you have had Democrat that's been in there forever in the last 30 years, they are part of the reason that the wealth gap has jumped in the last 30 years. They're part of the reason. I'll show you. Like, if you see this right down here, it actually says this is right in 87 when the UN introduced the Brundtland report, which was the first climate change proposal. And then right here is 1992 when you just see it kind of evens out for just a little bit. There's a jump, and then it starts to go even again. Just like that, it starts to go flat again, right? Just like here, it's flat. It's flat for so many years. It's just flat, flat, flat. Like here, it's flat, right? And then Reagan gets in office and the wealth gap begins to close, the top 10%, and it starts to close while Reagan's in office. And then 87 hits, and then bam, the first UN wealth gap thing, and regulations go. The bankers get these regulations released. And then boom, there's kind of a flattening. And then guess what happens? 1992 hits. The climate change proposals put in that controls 17 areas of life. It controls, remember, it controls food, it controls education, it controls healthcare, it controls land, it controls air, it controls all areas of government and life. And what happens is it just goes like this and it never stops. And at the end here is 2008 when the crash happens, and it actually gets much worse. Much, much worse, which is why people, I think, rebounded with Trump. But this wealth gap is just insane. And we go back to Titanic levels, where things when it used to be the Titanic, where it was British era. When you see Victorian novels, that was the Victorian wealth gap. When the Queen was in charge, Queen Victoria, that's the wealth gap that Queen Victoria had in her era. And it tells you something. When Queen Victoria's wealth gap era came back into town, that maybe that kind of government was put back in place, and it was on a grand scale at a global level. And so that didn't happen. You can see, I can show you this. So you can see that this happens, this wealth gap just continues to happen. Let me see this, hold on. So as you can see, this wealth gap happens through 3 presidencies, through Clinton, Bush, and Obama. Like, you can just see it go. You see how it gets really, really bad at Obama? Like, I try to add on more there. Do you see how bad it gets? So that happens through 3 presidents. It doesn't stop. It just keeps going. Clinton, Bush, Obama. There's a little bump in there with Bush because of the World Trade Center. Just keeps going. it doesn't matter what president. That means the GOP and DNC are working together in some union. And that's why I say it's not just clean the GOP that needs to happen, it's clean the DNC that needs to happen. Both sides need to have our representatives cleaned out. And the whole point is that you have to remember the American Revolution was fought against a parliament. It wasn't just fought against a king, a tyrant, King George III. Remember that every single bill King George III passed down was passed down by a parliament. Remember, King George III had control over a parliament. Parliament didn't really have a whole lot of power, and so Parliament passed whatever King George III said. But there was a parliament that worked for the king. And every single bill that came down, every single thing, every tea, everything that, every kind of army that came in and stayed in their houses, every single order that came down of tyranny that came down on the American colonies was passed, was an act of Parliament. Parliament had been around in England since the Magna Carta in the 1200s. And people seem to forget that America formed not just a parliament, but a form of government that represented the people on a local, state, and federal level that was different from the Parliament of Europe, was different from the Parliament of the King of England, because the Parliament and the King of England only had people who were of the wealthy and upper class. That's all that was in the Parliament, so that they benefited from everything the king did. So they all got the money. If the king did well, they did well. And so they were part of that upper class. And so when we have people, when you watch the national prayer, the national breakfast prayer, and you see this Democrat and Republican next to each other, then you look them up and up Harvard, up Dow Chemical. Oh, look at that. And where did they go after Dow Chemical and Harvard? Oh, then they started working for what? They started working for their city councils and then their House of Representatives in their state. And then they moved on up to federal. That's the track. They move city council, then state, then federal. That's the track, kind of like just in a military. And that's exactly what the UN does. They say work with us as state, federal, they say local, state, and federal level. And you work for the UN and you pass their bills. And it's a very easy job because all you have to do is go shake hands and smile at babies. And then the Queen gives you these great sounding bills that say fight poverty. And the news will always support you 100%. They'll give you 100% funding. The only problem is that we, the people, lose our rights along the way. We've lost our right to publish whatever we want, say whatever we want. We've lost our money. We've gotten more and more poor. The banks have gotten more and more power. When that big, huge financial crisis came along, let me ask you what happened. The banks didn't have any of their money together, and you can watch it. At the beginning of the financial crisis, you come up and you say, well, show us, banks, show us where you actually own the house. And they can't show you, so the landowner gets to keep the house. And all of a sudden, there's this turn within like 3 to 5 months. And even in Florida, the most upstanding state, the most conservative state there is, was supposed to be the most best judges there are. There's suddenly this turn where the banks don't have any of their documents at all. They don't have any signatures proving they own the land. They've got nothing. They have absolutely none of the paperwork they need to prove they own the land. And the landowner is one payment away from actually owning their land, and the bank gets to keep the land. It's the largest land grab. And so now the banks and the royal families own the most land all across from coast to coast in America. It's incredible. And you can see how Bush worked with them with that. But the Democrats didn't stop them. All the headlines said, oh, this is so great what Bush is doing. Please go buy land. That's your big thing. Own a home. Susie Orman got on Oprah and said, own a home. Own a home. That's your big deal. Go and own a home. Didn't they? Didn't they say, go get into a loan? Didn't they say, that's your job, go and get a home? And then, oops, that's right now. And what did she say to do? What was the solution? Just go give the deed back to the bank. Go give your deed back to the bank. And then you find out later that, Oprah was part of the climate change private investment firm in this Giving Club thing. It's all the same thing. And so anyway, so we need to replace the GOP and the DNC, not just the DNC, or not just the GOP. So there are districts where the DNC rules. There's no way you're going to get a candidate there's no way you're going to get a Republican candidate. There's no way. And it doesn't matter because Republican candidates, the GOP would probably put in somebody that votes Democrat anyway. So, because they're full of never Trumpers. So what you want to do is you want to have people run as DNC, run Democrat that still are going to go against this establishment, this climate change establishment. It doesn't mean actually environmental change, because the environment's got a whole lot worse. But what they mean by climate change is like, oh, let's change the climate around here. Let's get it into a more socialist, more as one, more peaceful, less fighting. Yeah, there's no fighting in a slave camp. There's a reason why all the slaves sang on plantations. Everybody was singing on a plantation. Go down, Moses. Oh, let's all just sing. Yep. Slave songs exist for a reason. You don't hear about songs in a place where a man owns his own business, do you? Because he's working and he's free. You know what I mean? Like, there are some in sailing ships. Hoist up, you John B. Sail, see ya, sail set. There's some freedom songs. So, like, they don't sing America the Beautiful anymore. Anyway, they've kind of buried all the American folk songs about freedom. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, I'm getting too much pain. I better leave. So pain's kicking in. All right, so that's what Clean the DNC is to go ahead and put in new people. It doesn't matter who it is, where it is. Go ahead and check out. I would be aware they do have some new people come up, like Jeff Bezos has trained them. If it's a young person, like the young people, you see it already. You see it already in places like young people are great, but they don't have experience. Like they don't have, it's supposed to be fair representation. I want you to really think about this. I mean, I taught kids when I was young. I knew a lot when I was young, but you tend to think you know everything. And I really want you to think, do you think a young person can handle George Soros when he comes and makes a play? You're handing your bank account over to whoever you elect. So when I think about it, I'm like, well, do I want to hand my house and my property over to this person? Who do I want to hand my house and my property over to? I want to hand my house and my property over to somebody who's actually owned a house and a property. Does that make sense? I don't want to hand my house and my property over to someone who doesn't know what a land deed is. You know, a lot of these people that are coming up, they come out of college, literally come out of college. They don't like, okay, this perfect example is the guy that was on this National Day of Breakfast Fair. He came out of college. He came out of Harvard. He worked for Dow Chemical for 8 months. And then, boom, right into politics. The man knows nothing about living. That's why he says, see, we're normal people like you. Doesn't know crap about living in the real world. Doesn't know a thing, hasn't had to do anything for it. Just got attached to Dow Chemical, has it in with them, knows the people, and that's it. Now he's attached to a chemical company. And he's at Harvard. He's got the in with the chemical companies. That's it. He can share company secrets with BASF, the world's largest chemical company. He has something the other side wants from now on. He's great for Democrats because BASF is with the Democrats. They are always going to want him with Germany. UN is always going to want him anyway. So I better go. In a lot of pain. I love you guys so much. That's what Clean the DNC is, and I'll see you guys around. Big voting. February 11th kicks off the next voting season. Democrats, you have your next round of primaries in New Hampshire, and then after that it's Nevada. And that's what Clean the DNC is going for people who are like you, who can handle and fair representation is what we're going for. And that means someone who you believe, who you'd want to hand your household over to, if that makes sense. And just remember, I just really want to press this. Like, people were really shocked when they saw that people lied. Like, there's a big thing that they found out. Climate change. I presented a climate change website where it showed like the goal climate action 13, like their goal 13 climate action. And it showed like all the climate goals, the global goals, and it showed all the goals of climate change. And it was all the lobbying, like every left lobbyist under the sun. And they were so shocked that they'd been lied to. So shocked that they'd been ever lied to. And they're so shocked. And I was like, what do you think wolves in sheep's clothing means? Like, what do you think that means? Like, wolves never appear as wolves. They always appear as sheep. They always appear like, oh, you know, like you want to come hug them. You know, it's in today's society, they've really trained us to, if we meet someone dangerous, we automatically go, you must be the bad guy. We don't think, oh, you're dangerous, you must be good at fighting. You know, you're dangerous, good. Are you fighting for good or are you fighting for evil? You know, because there are dangerous people who fight for good and there are dangerous people who fight for evil. You know, to fight for one or the other, you have to be dangerous. And Jordan Peterson talks about that for sure. So, all right, and he's liberal for sure. All right, love you guys. Bye.